Hello my friends, Katy here with Eastwicks Paper and Ink, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Precision Stamp Press from Couture Creations. This is the packaging, very simple, nothing complicated about it. Set that off to the side. This is the stamp positioning tool. It comes with a couple of magnets. It's got the little tabs on it. I'm not going to mess with those. They seem to interfere with my microphone. There's some key differences in this stamp press compared to some other stamp positioning tools out there. This squishes down. Now I have these magnets here, so it's kind of interfering a little bit. But you can see that it presses down, and you've got on all four corners. The other thing that's different about this is that there is no corner. It's all open. So you just have a lip right here on the edge. I don't mind that. Going in, I had some ideas on how I was going to make this work. The reason that I purchased this stamp positioner is because I wanted to use this with my background stamps. Now, if any of you have caught my video for hashtag Team Tiny, where I do use one background stamp on a couple cards. I show you that I put my background stamp on my work surface, ink it up, put my cardstock down, take a scratch sheet of paper, and really make sure that I'm applying even pressure, and I do it for a few minutes to make sure that the ink is transferred because it's a one and done. Now, what this reminded me of with the pressing is the Fiskars stamp press. This is the same. You've got a space in between, which is nice. It allows you to put your stamp over your project wherever you're working and be able to press it down, lift it up. I use this quite a bit. Again, the problem is it's a one and done. You can't, I don't know about you, but for the life of me, I can't line anything up even with a clear acrylic blocks. So once I've done it. So for me, it's a one and done. So what intrigued me was the fact that this has a door. This has the hinge, and I like that. It makes it different enough, in my opinion, in the fact that nothing is closed off. You can put as big of a sheet of paper as you want in there, and that is ideal for me. It opens up a lot more possibilities, and some of you might be wondering, well, it doesn't have the corners. How am I going to keep it, in a certain position? No, we're so used to tucking in. And I knew immediately that I would be using some sticky grid. Now, this is 2 squares. I'm going to put this down here in a few minutes, but this is 2 squares wide. So I think it's about 2 inches. I think the squares are about 1 inch each. And that was plenty. You don't need a whole sheet of sticky grid. I think that's kind of wasteful. After playing around with this, I use watercolor paper. I've used regular 110-pound cardstock, 80-pound cardstock. All of it stayed perfectly in place. So you do not, you can if you want, but I think it's kind of wasteful, but you don't need a whole platform of sticky grid. In fact, on my other platforms, I have cut off 4 squares and put it in the center and use that as well. Now, you might be wondering, well, I do have other stamp platforms. I have all of them with the exception of the Misty. And you might be wondering, well, what are you buying this for if you already have those? For some reason, I still struggled with my background stamps. And I thought with this having the door and the fact that I have to press down, I was finding with some of the other hinges that they're a bit loose, and so they slide up and down. This one has a little bit, but not a ton, and even less when you push it down and and you're stamping. And of course, since you have to push this down to get anywhere at all, it allows you that stability so that you have even less movement. Now you get a little bit of movement, but not much. And so that's what intrigued me to purchase it. Maybe no different, but that's what prompted me to buy it. So the other thing, so if you don't have sticky grids, first I'm going to say this. you can go to Hobby Lobby. My Hobby Lobby, I'm in near Wilmington, North Carolina, carries sticky grids. They're $6.99 and you can use a coupon. So I highly recommend them. Again, you get 5 sheets, the ones they sell, because they have 2 different sizes. Not at Hobby Lobby, but Hobby Lobby has the big ones. So they have the 6" by 8.5". And you get 5 in a pack, and you can cut them down, and I could probably get away with just one strip, one set of squares, but I chose to do the 2 because if I want to bring this out, I have the ability to always have enough. And in fact, that's mostly what I do, is I stick it out on the second set of squares, and it's plenty sticky. I haven't had any movement of my cardstock since I've started playing with this and using this. So that's one of the things I knew I would use going in. The second is, if you have the Misty Creative Corners, you also have this option. Now these are pretty reasonably priced, and you get several different bits in there to use to give you different angles and things like that. So you can find them on sale. I mean, I think I picked mine up at scrapbook.com during a sale. I think I paid $15. That might be the regular price, $15, but if you can get them on sale, you get them even less. Worth it. If you have stamp platforms, no matter if it's this, any other one, it's worth it. Trust me, because you have these corners, so you have 2 of them that are magnetized, and you can stick those anywhere you like. And of course, you've got this up here, so if you want to have, create that. I don't have all of my pieces out for that. But the other thing is your L corner, so you have this as an option as well. And again, with my other stamp platforms, there's times where I've just cut a 4 block of squares off and set it in the center, and that's enough also. So you really can stretch these sticky grids out because they really do hold your paper down really, really well. The other thing people might be concerned with is the fact that this is the same color as the platform. It's somewhat difficult to see. Now, I don't have horrible vision, but I can see these numbers perfectly fine. But if you struggle, then you can just take a permanent marker. You can take some acrylic, paint, and just mush it into those notches, and that's going to bring those right out. To me, those are minor things, easy to overcome if that has you on the fence with getting, this particular platform, if it's something that interests you. I purchased mine at Scrapbooking Made Simple, and it took a month to get here. I paid $19.99, and I think it's originally $25. It may be that price now. I'm not for certain. I do know that Stacy is the only one in the United States at Scrapbooking Made Simple to carry this platform. So if it's something you're interested in, that is the only place that you can pick this up at this time. So I think that's about it as far as, what it's all about, some of the things that might be a hang up for some people, and how to overcome them. I'm going to set this up and put in my sticky grid, and then we're going to go through some of the stamps that we're going to use and cardstocks. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my sticky grid in place, and I'm just going to go through quickly the papers that I'm going to use. I've got a couple 3 sheets of Nina 80 pound, and I'm going to use a couple pieces of hot pressed and cold pressed watercolor paper. So this is the Canson Heritage 100% cotton hot pressed watercolor paper, and I'm going to use the small one for a couple detailed stamps and the large one for a background, so we can see how it stamps on the hot press. And I've got the B paper watercolor paper cold press that I'm going to do the same, use one for the background and one just to stamp a few smaller detailed images. And then the stamps that I'm going to use are the Thanks stamp set big thanks words, just so I can have some of the, I can test out the tiny words stamp sets and also some bigger fonts so we can get some sentiments stamped in there. This is one of the background stamps that I'm going to try. It's got some fine detailing in it, fine lines, and this is the Floral Fantasy from My Favorite Things. And this was the some of the stamps that I'm going to just put on the smaller pieces just so we can see how each one stamps. I'm going to use some different colored inks for those too. And then this is the Flora background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. This one has a little bit bolder lines on it, so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to test that. Inks I'm going to use are VersaFine Clair, Nocturne, Antique Linen, Ink on Threes, Fade Out, No Line Watercoloring, and some VersaFine Onyx Black, just as kind of a comparison to the VersaFine Clair. So with that being said, let's get started. So I'm going to start with the Floral Fantasy background stamp, and I'm going to be using the hot pressed Canson Heritage watercolor paper, and I'm going to be using the Ink on 3 Fade Out ink for that. Now it's designed to be a much lighter ink, so I did have to stamp this a couple of times in order to get it visible. It stamped well the first time, but because it's so light, you know, you have to stamp it a few times just so that you can visually see it. And then of course when you're painting or whatever, or coloring, it's gonna fade out on its own and blend in with everything. So I was very pleased with how it stamped out. Of course it's hot pressed, so it's a smooth surface. I like to use a towel sometimes. I did find with the stamp platform that you definitely had to make sure you pushed more than you rubbed. Like with my other platforms, you know, it's easier to use the cloth because I don't put quite as much pressure, and then I don't have that halo effect. With this one, I found that I needed to press down and put that pressure down more so than, you know, pushing and rubbing. And you can see I'm really pushing down on you know, some of these. Now I've moved on to the cold pressed watercolor paper from B Paper Company, and again this is cold pressed, so it's got a bit more texture to it. So again, you're gonna be stamping more on those, and you still need to stamp extra anyway just to be able to see that impression from the stamp. I don't know what was wrong with the stamp. It looked filthy, you know, being stamped on there is odd. To the naked eye it looked clean, but I guess it wasn't. So, but overall, you know, you can see I'm really pushing on certain spots, and it's just because you needed to put more pressure, but the lines still stayed crisp. I didn't find them to be too bold, which it was important to me. Now I'm using a strip of the cold press watercolor paper to stamp a couple of these flowers. I just wanted to give a comparison with not only the paper but the ink. So this one is going to be using the Tim Holtz Distress ink in Antique Linen, and that way I can, you know, I could visually see which one might be a better ink to go with. And I think honestly, hands down, was the Antique Linen as far as stamping went. Normally in the past when I've stamped with Antique Linen for no line watercoloring, it kind of was splotchy, and this was perfect on both the cold pressed and the hot pressed. So it was a one and done for that, and it really came out nice. So I was pleased. And so this one is just going to be the little piece of hot pressed, and you can see, you know, using those sticky grids, the paper didn't come up. I've had no problem with, you know, with my cards, you know, moving or having to reposition or anything like that. So I do highly recommend these for any of your stamp positioners, even if you don't have one of these, or if you choose to purchase this one, I definitely recommend to put a sticky grid in there. And so this is, again, the antique linen. And you can see it came out really, really nice. A couple darker pieces, but that could have just been extra ink on the stamp. So it was, I just had some ink that I needed to wipe away there. So this is the Flora Black background stamp from Simon Says Stamp, and I used the VersaFine Clair with it in Nocturne. And this, I had some problems with. I stamped it several times, at least 3 times. And as you're going to see, because I kind of cut some of it out because it was repetitive, that there were parts of the stamp that wouldn't take any ink. It was like there was a gouge in the line. But even after 3 times, there were still spots that were kind of bare and splotchy. And you probably can't see it in the video. But one of the things I don't like is the constant stamping, because it makes it darker and darker and darker. So for this stamp set, I'm going to be using a VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And to save some time, I just put the sentiments together. Normally, I wouldn't do that. Now I ink up with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and the skinny sentiment, the smaller font, inked up perfectly the first time. You can see the thanks didn't, and I had to keep going back. And but even though I had to do that, and I eventually take that smaller font sentiment out, it still was a nice crisp image. It didn't halo out. It wasn't blurred or anything like that, even though I had gone in and stamped a couple times on that thanks before taking it out. Now, just to recap, the sentiments, I usually don't have any problems with any of the sentiments on any platform that I use. So that, you know, really wasn't much of a test or anything. What it did help me was the ink. So that sentiment was with VersaFine. This background stamp was done with VersaFine Clair Nocturne. And off camera, I went and used the VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp that out, and I got a much better impression the first time with, you know, just one stamping with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, I should point out some of the lines and stuff that there may be a defect in the stamp set, but I didn't struggle with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. So there's definitely some differences in the inks. Now, this background stamp I was showing you that I had some really good lines, even though I had to stamp it off multiple times. It didn't halo out, and I really had to apply a lot of pressure. So that was really key for me. This, of course, is the antique linen and on the watercolor paper, and those were great. I would definitely use the antique linen even compared to the fade out ink because of the impression that I got the first time. So I highly recommend your sticky grids, but I'm showing you here if you use a bar magnet, you can also use that to create a corner for yourself if you don't have sticky grids or the creative corners. Overall, I like the stamp press. I do recommend it. The price point is fantastic. Shipping time's a little bit long, but you know, that's not anything that we can control. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If there's any questions that you have, please let me know. The other thing I'm going to point out here real quick is using the little blocks for the sticky grids. That's another way that you can use those sticky grids to, you know, move your paper up if you're doing some layered stamping or something. Also, the fact that you can hang your paper off of the stamp press, I thought was really, really nice. So let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to share and subscribe, and leave me a comment below. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next video.